everyone! Now that I've graduated with my MA, I can be a little more open about my graduate school experience. So in this video, I'm going to cover the coursework that my degree involved, as well as the program as a whole. So this video won't involve my teaching assistantship. That's where I got involved in the Jordan Peterson pronoun controversy. So that's not what this video is about. This video is just more about the coursework and program as a whole. So first, I just want to give a bit of background. I did my undergraduate degree at Simon Fraser University in Communication and Political Science. So during my last year at Simon Fraser, I applied to 2 graduate programs and I was accepted to both. I got into McMaster University for their MA Communication and New Media, as well as, of course, Wilfrid Laurier University for their MA Cultural Analysis and Social Theory. I applied to these places because I wanted to do my master's degree in Ontario. I wanted to do it in Ontario for 2 reasons. One was that I'd never lived there before. I've lived in BC, Nova Scotia, and Quebec, but never Ontario, so I wanted to try it out. And secondly, because in Ontario you can get a Master of Arts degree in 1 year as opposed to 2 years and still write a major research paper. And writing a major research paper was an extremely important aspect for me. I knew I didn't want to do a coursework degree. Both Laurier and McMaster offered me a scholarship and a TA-ship. But if you pay attention to university rankings in Canada, you'll probably be wondering why I chose Laurier over McMaster, because McMaster clearly ranks higher. But the degree at McMaster was an MA in Communication and New Media, and I don't really care for new media, and also no one even really uses that term anymore. So I ended up going with Laurier because the MA in Cultural Analysis and Social Theory sounded to me like a very good mix of philosophy, sociology, anthropology, and cultural studies. I did my undergraduate in communication, as I mentioned, and people who go into communication tend to be a little bit vapid, so I wanted to do something that I thought would have a bit more depth. One of my close friends who did a geography degree but took a couple electives in communication studies put it perfectly when she told me that people who go into communication studies are ambitious people, but they're ambitious about stuff that doesn't matter. So I thought that was great. So I choose Wilfrid Laurier University and I move to Waterloo, Ontario, and it's the first day of my orientation. I sit in the room and there are about 13 other people in there. We go around the room and we introduce ourselves and we say what our research interests are. Mine at the time was the consolidation of media industries, but I ended up writing my major research paper about free speech on campus because that's what my supervisor suggested. But as we go around the room on that first day, I start to get what I can only describe as a sinking feeling. We go around the room and people's research interests are queer studies, Marxism, queer and gay studies, Islamophobia, Indigenous studies, more Marxism, more queer studies, fat studies. And honestly, walking into that orientation, I was extremely disappointed and I thought to myself on that first day, this is not going to be good. I was genuinely excited to go to grad school and I thought I'd make a lot of friends and be around a lot of open-minded and smart and cool people, and I gave it a chance. I still talked to these people and I went for coffee with them after class before I was ousted and they stopped inviting me and stopped talking to me. I also interacted with the students from the MA Communication Studies program, because I took a class in that department and I TA'd in that department. And yeah, I'm glad I didn't go into that program. Most of the people in that program were overweight white girls in their early 20s, and they were the kind of girls that would post all over social media about empowering women and supporting women and feminism. But then when it came to my situation at the university, they went straight to social media to call me a fucking stupid bitch and post rude things about me. So what can you do? On that note, I've actually been thinking about doing a video on white female culture. When I told people I was doing my degree in cultural analysis and social theory, they would ask what that consists of. And I would just be completely honest in that it's a degree in nothing, really. Sometimes I would say an MA in identity politics or an MA in postmodern neo-Marxism, but an MA in nothingness works too. So I'm talking about the coursework aspect here, though. I did get a lot out of independently writing my major research paper because it is fulfilling to write, a 60-page paper by yourself. So I will go through my courses now. But before you comment that I should have known that a program called Cultural Analysis and Social Theory would be full of postmodern neo-Marxism and I'm just an idiot, again, I genuinely thought it would be an interesting mix of philosophy, sociology, anthropology, and cultural studies. I wasn't aware of the red flag terms like I am now. So, on to my courses. Alright, so CQ 601, Cultural Analysis and Social Theory. This class had a lot of intersectionality. Michel Foucault, Gilles Deleuze, Giorgio Agamben, Jacques Derrida, Judith Butler. I sadly do not connect with the work of any of these people. For my presentation in this class, I did it on Hart and Negri's book Empire, the chapter called The Dialectics of Colonial Sovereignty, and we were required to have a media aspect to our presentation, so I showed a couple clips from the BBC documentary Empire with Jeremy Paxman. I had watched this in a previous undergraduate course, so I recommend it. And this was one of the parts that I showed.
The empire was certainly cruel, unjust, and unjustifiable if you were a slave on a plantation in the 18th century. But it was benign and humane if you were rescued from a slave ship by the Royal Navy in the 19th century. For good or ill, much of the world is as it is today because of the empire. From the way it looks, to the sports people play, from the religion they practice, to the language they speak. It has changed the very genetic makeup of Britain. If only we can look at it clear-eyed, it can tell us a lot about who we are. It's a story that belongs to all of us.
We've been through pride, we've been through shame. Mostly nowadays we seem to be in denial. But if we really want to understand who we are, it's time we stop pretending the empire was nothing to do with us.
After showing that, my classmates had a discussion because you had to host a 20-minute discussion or something like that. And I commented on how I thought Paxman's ending statement there was pretty reasonable. Then I later found out that the professor for that course had gone on Facebook and posted about how I am a defender of colonialism, and she had literally witnessed me defending colonialism in her class. Then we have CQ 602, Approaches to Cultural Analysis. In this course, we at least read the original texts of Marx, Freud, and Nietzsche, but the rest was just Foucault and more intersectional feminism. So this next course, Ethics, Affect, and Embodiment, I didn't actually take because I found the title to be appallingly ridiculous, so I didn't take it. But in one of their classes, apparently they just meditated, and I know some people might think that's cool, but when it gets to be a situation where you are meditating in class and then you're writing a reflection paper about your meditation, how can that be graded to any kind of standard? Apparently affect is a significant concept in psychology, but this was not that kind of affect. This was just a word that means nothing. I did have to do a unit on affect in my 602 course, the previous course I talked about, and the girl who did her presentation on the reading that week relating to affect made the class write what makes us happy on post-it notes, and then we had to put them around the classroom. So people wrote like coffee and travel and cats, or whatever. Again, this is graduate school where people will be earning the credential of master's degree. And if you know me personally, you will know that I don't like this feel-good, pseudo-therapeutic elementary school stuff. And throughout the year, we had a course called Colloquium as well, which was just preparing us to do research and write our papers and all that. So, the next semester I took English 644, Cosmetics, Aesthetics, and Beauty. I feel kind of bad criticizing this course because the professor was pretty nice. But I mean, in one of our classes, you had to bring in 5 objects. So, for example, some people brought makeup, perfume, a lemon, there was some candles, I think. And then we spent the whole class sorting everyone's objects into categories. And then we had to guess the categories. So, like color or texture or purpose or something like that. And even though the course was about aesthetics and beauty, the objects didn't have to be related to aesthetics and beauty. And then we had to write a paper about our reflections on this class activity of categorizing objects. I wrote a lot of reflection papers in grad school, actually, and they're just, I mean, how can you be graded properly and standardly on your personal reflections? And I'm sorry, but categorizing objects by color and style is not something to me that seems like it belongs in a 600 level graduate course. This seems to me more like an elementary school activity. This class had PhD students in it too, and I feel like you guys actually won't believe me, but I do have the paper I wrote to prove it. And in another class for the same course, we went to Shoppers Drug Mart, and we had to make reflections about the layout of the store. And honestly, I didn't really mind because at least I could just walk around and get some things that I needed. But yeah, we had to write a paper about the layout of Shoppers Drug Mart. And to be fair, there was probably more value to this activity than the object categorization show and tell one. But again, I do have the paper I wrote to prove that this is what we did. CS 617, Risk, Media, and Science. This class had some potential, but it's the kind of class where it's mostly just based on student presentations, so I learned the most just researching my own presentations. But the other students in the class were SJWs, and so the class was just mostly about social justice. Kind of like where everyone watches a Nike ad with fit women in it, and then everyone complains that this is not a body positive commercial. It's very 2007, if you know what I mean. That's around the time when everyone started caring about media representation of women in advertising. And so, here I am, over 10 years later, discussing the same thing at the same intellectual level in which I discussed this topic in high school. CQ 617, Past Violence and Public Action. This was mostly a nothingness class. I actually just don't really have anything to report. But we did go on a field trip to the Neuberger Holocaust Center in Toronto, though, and this was a positive for me, and the kind of field trip that really does belong in graduate school. Like where you go to a museum exhibit and discuss it afterwards. That was good. So much relies on class discussion, though, and so because everyone in my class was an SJW, the class discussions were very, very limited. So let me be clear that I applied to graduate school not to advance my career prospects. I am just someone who genuinely enjoys learning and enjoys the classroom environment. So the most disappointing thing for me then, in my year of graduate school, is that I didn't really advance intellectually beyond what I had learned in my undergraduate degree. Of course, I learned a lot considering the whole free speech and open inquiry battle I was involved in, so in that sense, I did get a lot out of my degree, but if that stuff hadn't happened to me, then I would have felt like I kind of wasted a year of my life. And yeah, okay, I get a credential out of it, but again, it was never about the credential for me. It was about the opportunity to continue my studies and for the opportunity to write a major research paper. So I hope this video helped you if you are thinking about applying to graduate school, or just if you're interested in what's happening in arts and humanities programs. I hope you can tell by my comments that, a lot of what happens in graduate school is pretty infantilizing and not really up to standard, at least from what I experienced. As always, I look forward to reading your comments, And please subscribe if you like the videos I produce, because it helps me know what kind of stuff to keep talking about. Thanks.